Hi everyone, welcome to Out and About with Tom and Sherry. I'm Sherry.
I'm Tom.
And this is our first video in our series of videos, aside from our intro, on our 5-week Mediterranean Grand Tour that we did the whole month of May. And we did an intro video about the whole 5-week vacation, just kind of a summary about it and everything. And this is our first video focused just on our 3-day stay in Rome, Italy.
Yep. So if you want to see what this whole video series will be about, you might want to back up and watch the intro video, because that's where we talk about what the whole series of videos will be about, what we did on the whole 5 weeks and things we're going to talk about during the course of this series of videos.
Yeah, so again, this video is just on our stay in Rome. We flew into Rome, arrived on a Friday afternoon, and we took an Uber from the airport, which is about a 40-minute drive, to our Airbnb that we decided to do. So we'll have some information in this video about our Airbnb and do a tour inside.
Yep.
It was really nice Airbnb, very centrally located.
And you know, for people, we saw a lot of people questioning, well, how do I get from the airport? How much does the airport cost, or travel from the airport cost? A taxi from the airport to a lot of places in Rome within the original Roman walls is 55 euros. We took an Uber and it was that same price, but an Uber we could schedule in advance, which we like to do.
Yeah, so that worked out good.
So
We, like I said, Airbnb, so you'll see that in the video. Our first night, first meal in Rome, and our area that we were in was the Piazza Navona area, and which was really centrally located. So we'll include some pictures and video from that area, which was really nice. It really was a central location, which we could just kind of branch out from there to the different places we wanted to see in Rome.
Yep. It was really walking distance to everything we wanted to see in Rome. We wound up taking a taxi to the Colosseum, but that was easily walkable too.
Yeah.
Piazzas, the fountains, the Spanish Steps, all easily walkable. Vatican City was easily walkable, and that's why another reason why we chose that Airbnb.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to share that information on the Piazza Navona. We went to the Pantheon, so we've got that included in the video. We went to the Spanish Steps. We had a really nice lunch over there, which was nice. And then went over to the Trevi Fountain, which was crazy. There were so many people at the Trevi Fountain. It was crazy.
Yep.
Yeah. So it was nice, though. We did see it and whatnot, so we got that included in the video. And then we have a little longer segment in the video about our pretty much most of the day visit to the Colosseum and the Roman Forum, which was really great. But really allow yourself plenty of time to spend the day over there seeing that.
Yeah. The Colosseum and the Roman Forum are definitely worth spending the whole day there. And back to the crowds, everywhere was crowded. We're from rural Nevada, so we're not used to big crowds. Everywhere we went was crowded. Trevi Fountain was very crowded. I think a lot of that was probably due to it was a Jubilee year, which brings a lot more people into Rome. It was during the conclave to figure out who the next pope was going to be, so that probably brought extra people into Rome. But what I'm getting at there is be prepared for crowds and be prepared to wait in line. But that's really part of the experience. Just standing in line, looking at these places, talking about them is part of the experience, and something in my mind that's very enjoyable.
Yeah. And we went in May again, so we weren't the height of the season, but yeah, prepared for the crowds and the lines, and try to book ahead of time if you can. That didn't end up working out for us, and we'll explain that as we go along. But then we surprisingly had friends from our area here, also in Rome, at the same time. So we met up with them for dinner, and it was a great restaurant. So we'll share some information about that in the video. So if you're looking for great places to dine, we would definitely recommend this place. And then the last part of the video is our time over at Vatican City, which was, again, pretty much an all-day visit. So we went to the Vatican Museum and St. Peter's. We did not get to see the Sistine Chapel, so you won't see that in this video because it closed the day before we got there in preparation for, as Tom mentioned, the conclave to pick the new pope. So we missed out on that. But again, it was a full day activity there. So that's what's going to be in this particular video. So we hope you enjoy it. Any other tidbits before we get going?
That's about it.
Okay.
And I don't know, something that I had to remind myself is, although we didn't get to see the Sistine Chapel, which is something I would like to see, Vatican City did not disappoint. And while the Sistine Chapel was closed for conclave, we also got to be there at a time in history, a very unique time in history, a Jubilee year when they were picking a pope. And it was one of the things I enjoyed just walking around. Maybe talk more about this once we get to Vatican City. But was just all the members of the clergy, the nuns, the bishops, the cardinals, all walking around Vatican City. I don't know what it is on an average day, but it was neat. Just the
period.
The period.
Yeah, the time that we were there. Yeah.
The energy.
Yeah, great. So it was a great 3 days in Rome. So we'll go ahead and get started. So we hope you enjoy the rest of the video. So this is pictures of the street where our Airbnb was, and it was a one-way street, and
the picture
it was about halfway. We were about halfway through that little street.
Yeah, and I would characterize that street almost as an alley, what we consider here in the U.S. an alley, but there was a lot of little narrow streets like that. And the picture on the left is looking left from the door of the Airbnb, and the picture on the right is looking to the right from the door of the Airbnb. Across the alley there was a hair salon, a barber shop,
and some kind of little hole-in-the-wall cafe music place, I guess. They had music at night. I didn't hear any music during the day, but it wasn't, disruptive. But it wasn't a noisy street, but you picked up a lot of sound from that little alley, even though it was an alley, because it was a main kind of an alley. It was used quite a bit, but it was not disruptive, I don't think.
No, it wasn't disruptive. It was an urban environment.
Yeah.
So, but we'll put the link or the name of the Airbnb in the comments, because I don't know, I thought the host was just outstanding and very accommodating, made it super easy. And I think it was our favorite place that we stayed
it was
for the whole 5 weeks.
Yeah, it was a good place. So
yeah. And there's the door, the actual door of the Airbnb. And one thing I really liked about it, it just felt exciting. You could just walk down this alley and just kind of slip in through the door and be inside from walk around in Rome, Italy. I mean, that's exciting to me. And this is just down the street in the little plaza area. There was a grocery store. So here's our video we took up inside the Airbnb.
We're at our Airbnb. 24 hours.
Yep, 24 hours travel time. We got to our Airbnb. We'll show you the outside later, but it's on this just narrow little street, practically an alley. This is our Airbnb. You got the kitchen over here, microwave, Nespresso machine, toaster. I've never seen a toaster like this. Refrigerator. Got some dishes in here. Very nice. Got the door right here. That's how you get in and out. Bathroom's pretty nice. Very nice in fact. Here's the bathroom. Got your toilet here and over here. At first I thought, I was like, oh great, look, there's a place to do your laundry. But I don't know what it is. It's not for doing your laundry because there's a washer dryer.
It's a bidet,
Here
obviously.
behind the door.
He knows what it is. Shower.
Shower. Washer dryer. They got laundry soap here.
That's nice.
It's all marble in here. Place to put your luggage. And a stick to open up the windows if you want to open up the tall windows.
Oh. Now what are these? Hold on one second here. Oh, more storage space.
Yeah.
Okay, lots of storage space.
Lots of storage space.
This is the bedroom.
Split unit. Air conditioners. It's really, you can tell it's real energy efficient. There's a little on-demand water heater there. Double pane windows, real thick windows. It's just a really neat place.
These
And
are all
it's pretty inexpensive too. It's about $200, just over $200 a night, which is
the wardrobe for
less.
clothes.
Yep.
Yeah, and we're kind of right in the city center area. We're not far from the Piazza Navona, which is a main area,
Yep.
and good walking distance to most places, although we can take Ubers. They have Uber Black here, not regular Uber. So we got a few tips from the taxi driver from the airport. It was about 36 minutes from the
36
airport.
minutes from the airport.
And then our host for the Airbnb met us here and gave us the tour, which was very nice.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's very nice.
So our next was our first dinner in Rome at the Dia Centauri, which was outside dining. So it was a nice little restaurant. So Tom, what did you have? Some kind of steak?
It was roast filet with a balsamic reduction, and it was just delicious.
And for my first meal, I went with calamari.
Sherry loves calamari.
I love calamari. So, and then salad, because we like to have salad. So, but ordering a salad in Rome is a little different. So they're larger, and you don't get like a salad before your meal kind of things. You have to order it with the meal, and it's not overly doesn't have a lot of toppings. And then you just get oil and vinegar. But we really liked it, so it worked out fine for us.
And the salads, the salads are generally, you order a salad, and the salads are around €5. And you order a salad, and it's generally enough for a couple people. It's generally plenty for a couple people.
And then Pellegrino. Tom really likes Pellegrino, but that was pretty much our drink of choice.
Yep.
For most of it. I would occasionally, no, I didn't have any wine in Rome, I don't think. No, I didn't. So it was just Pellegrino, really,
and
or water.
In Italy, they're very clear. It's San Pellegrino, not just Pellegrino. It's San Pellegrino.
Yeah. So we ordered a lot of Pellegrino. But the area that we stayed in was the Piazza Navona area. So we walked over to the Piazza Navona after dinner, and it's a nice area, lots of people, and it's a great place to just people watch. But the buildings that are in this area are pretty amazing, and then the fountains that are there as well are famous fountains. So this was our first one.
Yep.
A lot of these little selfie photos.
Yep. And there was a lot of street performers there too, which was neat. I really liked the Piazza Navona area.
So this was one of the great fountains there. And we tried to put the dates on stuff too, to kind of give you a sense. I mean, how old this stuff is just amazing. This church is in that piazza area, is just like the centerpiece of that whole area there, of that church. It was closed that night, But later on, here in a minute, we were able to go back there during the day.
And the fountains, something that I found interesting about the fountains is, you know, in the 1600s, people didn't have running water in their houses, and the fountains were actually where they would go to get water. You know, I worked in public works for a career, and they really focused, or they really paid a lot of attention to making things beautiful. They didn't just build a place to get water, but they made a beautiful place to get water. And I thought that was pretty neat.
So this is the Fountain of the Four Rivers, and it was designed by Bernini. So there were lots of people getting photos and selfies and whatnot at the fountain. But the carvings on it are just amazing. And you really, you know, if you don't have a tour guide book, which we didn't have, I mean, looking stuff up on your phone and whatnot to see what it is that you're looking at and the significance of it and what.
Yep. I mean, just visually they're stunning, but once you start digging down into the significance of these things, it's really neat. Something, like I mentioned earlier, something I always like to do is do some cooking when we travel. And it's an adventure, going into a grocery store in an area where you don't speak the language. Every time I do it, it kind of gives me an understanding of what it would be like not to be able to read. The packages look familiar and you can mostly figure out what it is from the packages. But one of the apps we used was Google Translate, which you can use the camera on your phone to look at a sign, or in this case, a egg package, to see what it says. And it just basically translates the text on whatever you're looking at in the photo to English. And it doesn't do a fabulous job.
It's pretty good, but there's certain words that just don't, for whatever reason, don't translate really well. And you see that on this picture.
Yep.
Instead of free range, it said from free reach. And then fresh fried eggs instead of, well, I guess fresh free range eggs.
Cage free, maybe.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's not 100%, but you get the gist of it, right? So yeah, it's a nice app to use.
You can figure it out, but yeah, Google Translate is a great app to use. You could translate text. You can type in text and push a button. It'll say that in the foreign language. So when you're traveling, it's a very good app to have. This is the meat we got, sliced artist pig. I was like, yeah, that looks pretty much like bacon, probably close enough. But
pork chop. But it ended up being a pork chop, which was fine. I like pork chops, so yeah, that was fine. But yeah, and it doesn't, like you see, you don't always get the full. I think that was supposed to be artist, and that's how it came out.
Artisan pig or something.
Yeah. So it's kind of a little quirky sometimes, but it really does come in handy for reading menus and signs and things like that. So
it adds to the adventure.
Yeah. And here's the little kitchen. Tom did the cooking for breakfast. We ate out for lunch and dinner, but Tom did the cooking for breakfast.
There's our supplies.
Eggs, yogurt, espresso machine, which is nice. And they're me eating my breakfast that Tom cooked me. So the next day we went to the church there that was at the piazza. And so these are some photographs inside the church. Our first church of many on this trip.
Yeah. I like going into old churches. They're beautiful places, and they're a nice place to just sit and take a break and contemplate a little bit.
But the work inside these churches is just amazing. And like I say, this is our first one of our trip. With the carvings and the frescoes on the ceiling. And all of them had an area where you could sit down, the pews and everything, and just sit there, reflect for a moment, take time to kind of look and see at the different things you're looking at. So you see that people just kind of sat in these pews, whether they were praying or just looking around, or.
Yep. Soak it all in. That's the phrase I use. I like to just sit there and soak it all in. And this one, you see the incense burner hanging down.
And so in the Piazza Navona, we were there during the day as well. So
Yeah, we went back during the day.
there's a video of us just sitting on the curb watching people go by, the street performers and whatnot. Over to the Parthenon in the Piazza della Rotonda, because of the rotunda of the building. So it was amazing.
Yeah. The Pantheon is for the technical stuff, it's the largest unreinforced concrete dome in the world. And it was just amazing to me. It's still intact from the time it was built. There was one cracked area in it, and that was it. And just an outstanding place.
Yeah, it was. And what was neat was you're walking down these streets, and you walk, and this picture is the first thing you see when you enter that piazza. Yep. And it's just one of those wow moments. You're like, what am I looking at here? Yep. So it was pretty amazing just to walk into that center there.
Yep. And something that I really found neat was here you have this ancient building and then restaurants and stuff right in there. These historic sites, very significant historic sites are just right in town. And everybody's living around them and enjoying them, which was neat.
And then walking through the columns, it was just huge, the space of it and whatnot. And what was interesting, we didn't get tickets for this, but as we were standing there just kind of awestruck by it, there was an English-speaking professor who was doing a private tour, and they were trying to get people to attend. Yep. So we're like, well, hey, why not? There was a long line to get tickets. So we're like, why not? So it kind of worked out pretty nice.
Yep, I think it was 20 euros a piece. We got to skip the line and have an English-speaking tour guide tell us about it. And he gave headphones, so he talked into a microphone, and then we had little earphones so we could hear, and so we didn't disturb everybody else, which was neat. But yeah, that's the concrete dome, and just look at that, and the light beaming in from the center, and
beaming on Tom.
I really like that picture.
And then just a video kind of standing in the middle, turning of this opening dome. And so it does rain inside. You say, oh, well, there's an opening. It does rain inside, and there's drainage in the floor.
Yep. But look at that. It's amazing.
Just these little alcove areas where different people are buried and different pieces of art and whatnot. This was one of the Emmanuel Victor the First, I believe, where he was buried. But significantly was the tomb of Raphael that was there. And it's just an odd thing to be in a building like that. You don't really expect that in the United States. It's kind of an odd thing. But we ended up running into it throughout our entire Mediterranean trip, no matter where we were.
Yep.
There were people of significance buried in different civic buildings or churches. Yeah. And then here's a shot of his sarcophagus there. And it was a neat I thought this was a neat photo from inside, looking back out through those big doors to that piazza area.
Yep. And then the apartments on the other side of the piazza. I mean, obviously it's an apartment. Somebody lives there, but
that's their view.
That's their view. That's where somebody lives, and that's their view out their window.
Yeah.
It's
pretty amazing. But as we mentioned, it was crowded, and again, everybody's getting their photo and selfie with the of the different fountains, and that fountain there in that piazza was no different than all the others. The Fountain de Pantheon.
Fountain de Pantheon.
And then just another picture of that piazza area, which was neat. We didn't eat there, but it's a great view if you're going to sit there and have some lunch or a drink or something like that. So it was nice. Yep. So from there, we headed over to the Spanish Steps. And as you can see, it was crowded.
There was a lot of people there too. We weren't the only one that decided to go on a European tour.
Yeah, so it was very crowded there. And what was unique, I didn't expect this, but here you see in this photograph on the buildings behind, because the steps are on the right and to the left, are all the high-end shops. There was Louis Vuitton and Yves Saint Laurent, and I think there was a Cartier. So it's right on the opposite side of where the steps are. But the steps were pretty amazing, and there's 135 steps up to this French church here, and which was built in 1502. And the steps have been in the news recently. Yep. Somebody made a wrong turn or something, and down the steps they went.
Drove his car down the steps, stopped partway down, and the steps have wood supports underneath them. They're marble steps with wood supports underneath them. And so to get his car off, they brought in a crane and lifted his car off the steps.
So, but it's just decorated so nice with the flowers and everything. It really is pretty and whatnot. We did not walk up the steps or up to the church, but you certainly can do that. But what we did do there was at the fountain. This was a fountain where you could get water. So this is the fountain that is translated the Fountain of the Longboat. And you can step out on this little step here in the photo to the left, and you can get water. And that's what Tom did. Tom's experience there.
And there was some legend that if you drank the water from that fountain,
I don't remember what
you'd live a long and prosperous life.
I don't remember what
something.
It was. Yeah.
Or you'd have great experiences in your life. And it was true, because I drank the water from that fountain and had some really great experiences on this trip.
And it is perfectly safe to drink.
Yep.
Yeah, they make a point of.
Yep.
If you look that up online, you can see that. So so Tom got his drink there. And then just right across the way there, we went and had a really nice lunch at the Don Nino restaurant, which upstairs was where the lunch area was. But this place apparently is really well known for their gelato ice creams. So there was a family across from us who all they were having were these fancy gelato sundaes. So they were really enjoying that. We had salads, which were really good. But to the right on the photograph is an actual, you can see a sliver of the Spanish Steps. So I had a little bit of a view from my seat, but it was a really nice little restaurant.
Yep. And we, obviously, you can see in the picture, we got the mozzarella salad, or margarita salad, which is fresh mozzarella, tomatoes, and fresh basil. All the food, I know we've said this a lot on this trip, but all the food was just outstanding. I don't think we had a bad meal the entire time.
No, I don't. Not that I recall, anyway. Yeah. So it was a nice little restaurant, and it was warming up, so it was nice and cool inside too.
Yep.
And then, as I mentioned, on that opposite side of the street, were the fancy shops. So that was a Louis Vuitton, and then Yves Saint Laurent, which is one of my favorite designers. So I got a picture there. So from there, it was a very short walk over to the Trevi Fountain. So a few photos, again, selfie of us there. But there were just a mass of people, which you can kind of see in the photographs. It was really difficult to get right in front of the fountain to take a photo.
Yep. Everybody wanted to take a photo in front of the fountain, us included, so you had to wait your turn. But that was built for people to go get water.
Yeah, and it's just, the artwork is
stunning.
Yeah.
To put it mildly.
And if you're wondering, we did not throw a penny or a coin into the fountain. Reason being, we couldn't get
the line was
to the
too
fountain.
long.
We didn't want to stand in that long of a line. So we did not do that. But it was just a really magnificent area. And then this was our second day in Rome. We went to the Colosseum and the Roman Forum. So this is, as you're walking, you have to, we got dropped off at a good distance from the Colosseum.
Yep.
And to note, we did not know this, but we ended up going to the Colosseum on the first Sunday of the month, which is free to museums. So we had booked a tour and had paid for it in advance to get a tour of the Colosseum. And again, just a heads up, beware, check your date, because the tour company notified us the day before we were supposed to do the tour that they were canceling because it was a free Sunday and they're not allowed to do tours on free Sundays. So we were a little taken back by that. We weren't quite sure what was up with that. But it actually, I think, ended up working better, I thought.
I think
than
so.
if we were on a tour, because we got to do it at our own pace.
Yep.
Right. So anyway, so we got dropped off. We did an Uber over there. And this is the area where you're just kind of walking up to the Colosseum. We haven't quite gotten there yet. So in the background you see the Forum, but then there's your first view of the Colosseum, which is pretty amazing.
And it's neat. You walk up to these places, and like Sherry said earlier about the Pantheon, you walk up to these places and you turn a corner, and it's like, there it is. And you're just like, wow. And a later tour guide, she used that expression not infrequently. She would say there's a wow moment coming up. And it sure was a wow moment.
So being a free Sunday, it was very crowded. And so we had to walk to the end of the line.
Yeah.
To find the end of the line in order to get into the Colosseum. So we walked completely around the Colosseum.
And then we got to come back to the entrance of the Colosseum at a nice slow pace as the line moved along. So what I'm getting at there is the line was not a negative thing. The line was what it was, and it was just, you're at the Roman Colosseum.
Yeah, you really got, standing in line, we got to really notice details on the outside of the Colosseum and different segments of how it's been repaired and
Yep.
different pieces that were built in different stages along the way. Yeah, and then, able to look things up on your phone and kind of read stuff. But some of these shots, you're just, again, because you're standing in line, if we were just walking past it quickly, you may not have noticed or really appreciated what you were looking at.
Yeah. And what was the deal with these? There was iron staples.
Yeah, in terms of restoration or holding things together and different rods and whatnot. There's a picture coming up that shows some bracing that they were doing on some of it. But
yeah, there was iron staples that held a cladding on here. That the cladding got removed, and then the staples got removed because somebody wanted to use the iron for something else, and it just
Yeah, interesting.
interesting. Now I'm really grateful that now we preserve these things. But here you can see steel bands around some of the columns, hold them together.
I liked this particular shot. One, you can see how it's deteriorating on these upper levels. Again, if you're standing there taking this in, you're looking at it going, that's ready to completely collapse. But clearly they have done restoration work and added these bricks that are on the left to stabilize that to stand up, and filled in the openings too, because the openings should be open, right? But they filled it in, but you can just see how it's continuing to deteriorate, and I just think that's really a unique vantage point.
But that building is approaching 2,000 years old, so the deterioration is understandable. But you could see a lot of restoration work and then a lot of just temporary bracing to help stabilize it.
And you can start to see on these bottom levels, they're numbered, and it's hard to see, but you can see each one, like going to a stadium now, you can kind of see it here in this photograph. This was, I think, 31 and 32, 3 X's, right, and an I. Anyways, it's like going to a what is that? 3 X's and an I?
31.
31, yeah.
Those are Roman numerals.
Yeah, right. But just like going to a stadium now, your different tunnels have numbers.
Yep.
So just kind of a neat experience there to see that.
But it is, I jokingly said those are Roman numerals, but when we were standing there looking at it, I was like, wow, those are Roman numerals. It's the Roman Colosseum. It's duh, but those are the kind of things that just kind of hit me, and I was like, wow.
So here we finally we're up to almost to the entry point. So we met some people behind us. They were from the United States as well. And we all put in our guess as to how long it was going to take us to get to the front of the Colosseum. And I think it took us 45 minutes,
yep.
About that.
Yep.
So it really wasn't that bad. And I think we really saw some things that we might not have noticed otherwise.
Yeah.
But we've made it inside in this photograph. We're now allowed to roam freely. Yeah, we're on the inside, and then you go off to the left. You get in. You have to go through a little security gate and whatnot. But yeah, I tried Google Translate on that, and that didn't quite work too well. But just different vantage points of looking at different things.
Yeah.
Your sight line is just amazing sometimes.
But you think about it, it's obvious, but it's still amazing to me. People have been coming here for 2,000 years for different reasons. They used to come see the shows there and stuff like that. But just the people over the centuries that come there is just meaningful to me.
And this was a cross. That it's hard if you don't notice it in the photograph. They're right in the center.
Yep. Which was erected later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Colosseum went through a variety of stages of usage. It held livestock after the Roman period. But different components on the inside that are still left. Those white, and there's a better picture coming up, but those are seats. And the columns laying on the ground in different places as you're walking around.
Yeah, I thought, boy, they shouldn't leave all these old artifacts laying around. People are just going to walk off with them. But I don't think it was quite the problem that I imagined it to be.
No. And then in the interior, they have, informational displays that you can read. And then they have some artifacts of parts that have fallen off. And there were statues of notable, famous people at that time. That were in the different arches, and these are some of the heads off those statues that
Those
were there.
statues.
There's the other parts of the statues. And they noted that sometimes they would just remove the heads off the statue because that person wasn't in favor anymore, and they'd put somebody else's head on there. Sculpted head.
Yep. Attempts to rewrite history.
So this is the view, and you know, it's hard to visualize this, but there was a floor that covered this whole area here. This is the down below underground part where the lions and the gladiators and whatnot were kept. And there's a picture coming up of a diagram to kind of show what that space looked like, but it's hard to imagine that. You look at that and go, you didn't see that when you were there at the stadium to see that. And here's that rendering photograph. So here at the top of it is the ground that they would have been standing on, but underneath was all this infrastructure where the animals were kept in cages and the slave gladiators were and whatnot. So they're trying to give you a little better visual of what this looked like and how it operated. And here's a photograph I was mentioning about some of the bracing.
Yep. Yeah, you can see the steel bracing that's been added on later. That's been there for quite some time.
But the different layers of work and construction. And here's a better shot of those seats.
Yep.
That particular segment of seats.
And that area down at the bottom there, that they still have shows. They've kind of built a stage area, and they still have shows there.
And here's a closer view of that underground area.
Which is a separate tour. If you want to do the separate tour, it's called the Colosseum Underground. And you can do that tour.
And then this is from just looking out over towards the Roman Forum. And there's Tom.
And the Roman Forum I really liked. There was an energy there. Sherry's more the knowledgeable person about history, and I just like to be in the spaces, and the Roman Forum was amazing.
And there's a little information. Like I said, so whether it was a little restoration project or whatnot, there would be either little displays about this particular one, the Arch of Titus, or it may be, just educational information. So you did find that.
'81.
Yeah, 81.
That was made in the year 81.
So this is heading into the Roman Forum area, roughly the 8th century BC to 608 AD. And so different structures were built at different times throughout those decades.
But it was just this nice walk through this area. It was kind of downward sloping, and it was just a neat area to walk through.
And the Roman Forum, at different stages, it represented different things, but it was a merchant area where you would go and, buy stuff and whatnot. It was a center of government, and also temples and whatnot for different people for worship. So it's just a lot of stuff in that space. But as Tom said, as you walk in here, just recognizing the significance of this area alone to the history of the world.
And something that really struck me are those large bronze statues up on top of the buildings.
And we have a photo coming up of that. What's on that other side, that white building that you see where the statues are, we have a photo of that because that's a more modern thing, but it certainly added to
that
visual there.
Whole visual, yeah. Yeah, you're looking at thousands of years of evolution of construction in that picture.
So this was one of the temples, 141 AD. You could not go in that building, as I recall. We did not go in. I don't know if it was closed that day, but I think the stability was in question, and so you weren't allowed to go into that building. But surprisingly, in really good condition otherwise on the outside. And another temple, what's left of a temple.
And you can see in these photos that they've reconstructed some of them. And, you know, at some point that was probably fallen over and they stood it back up. But you could see at the base of one of the columns the lighter material. And sometimes they would have to replace portions of the column, but they would do it with a different color so you could tell that that portion had been replaced. But look at that. And those are apartment windows. That's their view out their window. It just amazes me.
It was neat just to kind of stand there and take in what you were looking at. And even though you didn't always quite understand what you were looking at, the significance of the age and what did happen in that area was pretty remarkable. So there again, this photograph I included just specifically because of that white building in the back with the bronze statues, because the next photo coming up is what it looks like on the other side.
From the street.
Tom was really impressed with this building.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was huge.
It was enormous. And it really served no purpose except to be a monument to Victor Emmanuel II, who was, what, a leader in Rome? But
it was huge.
Yeah.
Unbelievable how big. The picture doesn't do it.
Yeah, the picture doesn't do it justice.
You were just like, oh my gosh, this thing is huge.
You just stood and looked at it in awe for a while.
And you could walk up there. We did not, but you could walk up there. So moving on, interestingly enough, we had friends who were in Rome at the same time we were.
Yep.
And they messaged us and let's get together for dinner. How unbelievable was that?
Yeah. I was talking to a friend of mine. He said, yeah, next week we're leaving for Rome to go on a cruise. And I was like, really? What cruise line are you going on? And they were going on a different cruise line, but we decided to have dinner together in Rome, which was just neat. And this restaurant was outstanding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really good. So clearly, you know, it's on one of these little alleys where all the restaurants are, quite honestly. So there's people always walking by, but I don't even remember the people walking by. You know, we ate outside.
Yep.
And there's a picture coming up here, but the people walking by didn't disrupt our dinner, or it's just part of the experience.
Part of it, yeah.
And we kind of got, this was our second to last day, I believe, yeah.
Yep.
And so we just, you know, didn't even notice it. But the food was great.
And they had street musicians that would come by and play music.
That's true, yeah.
And then, so that was neat.
So it was a great restaurant. And so this is the one we would recommend if you're looking for a restaurant. This is the one, and we'll put a specific address in the description on the video.
And they were very accommodating because, you know, we were meeting friends there, so I wanted to make a reservation. And so I found the restaurant, and it was really just kind of dumb luck that we found the restaurant. I'm like, yeah, that looks close to where we'll all be. And I sent them an email, hey, we'd like to make a reservation for this time. And they were like, yeah, no problem. And we came walking up, and they were like, are you Tom? And it was neat. And there's our friends, Dan and Annette, and our dinner that we had.
Yeah, we all got something different. So there's the big salad, because I like salad with dinner. So I ordered that. And I had some kind of pasta. I think that was my first pasta that I had. I'm not a big pasta eater, but I think it was like a seafood pasta. But you loved yours. What was yours?
I had roast tenderloin with the balsamic reduction on it, and it was just absolutely delicious. And then I had some pasta as well, and bread. Obviously, there's bread everywhere there.
Yeah. So it was a nice time. It was fun to meet up with them again. Who would have guessed we would have all been there at the same time? So it was a nice time. We were there for about 2 hours or so, I think. So it was a nice, relaxing dinner.
Yeah, it was a nice, relaxing. All the meals there. If you're in a hurry to eat a meal, you might be in the wrong country, because a dinner would take pretty much always every bit of an hour or more.
Yeah, yeah. And nobody rushes you out.
Nope.
Absolutely. We never had anybody. It was when we were done, we called them. And
yep.
We were never rushed anywhere. So that was very nice.
Yeah, you have to ask for your check. They don't bring it by, and you have to ask for your check when you're ready to go.
So the last part of our video is our day at Vatican City. We went to St. Peter's Square and the Basilica, as well as the Vatican Museum. So this is the last part. So Tom got a little panoramic view here, which was nice to see, to include that. So just amazing. An amazing visit. You walk in and you're just, first of all, you imagine where you're at. And then noticing the buildings. And
that's something that I've thought about a lot, is like, you see pictures of St. Peter's Square on TV and stuff, and you're standing there and you look around and you're like, we're at St. Peter's Square. And I mean, obviously we're at St. Peter's Square, but we're at St. Peter's Square, and you just look around and just the feeling and the people there. And since then, you'll see stuff from Vatican City on the news, and we're just like, man, we were there. Yeah, and there's the photo, and that's where the Pope speaks from, where there's those burgundy curtains. And but again, it was an exciting time to be there because it was during the conclave. So, and they were preparing for a big event. The media was getting set up there. All the major news networks were back in the back on scaffolding, and it was just an exciting time to be there.
And it's a big building and whatnot, big area and everything. But as you get closer to it, for me, it was just the significance of like this shot of that balcony, and how many times we've seen that in the news or whatever. Just how stately and just awe-inspiring, I think, the different shots were as you got closer to them.
And the people that have spoken from that balcony over history, and the people that have stood in the square and listened to people speak over the centuries is just...
Yeah, amazing.
I don't know how to put it in words, but it's just wow.
So this photo here is kind of a zoom in on two things. One is the clock, and there's clocks on either side, so I kind of wanted to get it at. But that circle with the black circle, that is the smokestack for when the smoke comes out, whether they had elected a pope with that vote or not. White, yes, black. No, other way around.
No, white.
White is they picked a pope.
Yep.
And black is not, correct.
And
so that's the smokestack right there.
And that smokestack isn't always there. They put up that smokestack for the conclave, and then when they're done, they take it back down. So that's a rare picture you're looking at right there. It's probably only 1 billion of those on the planet.
But a little closer view of the clock. And just the sculptures and whatnot that are there. Again, you kind of have to zoom in on these things, otherwise you miss that.
Yeah. Just the beauty everywhere, and the architecture and the beauty.
And the bell, there's
everywhere.
A bell in there. And then the different things that are in the square. that are there, the light posts, and those are the kind of things that I kind of gravitate to.
And I found that fencing interesting. You know, I would have thought it'd be some kind of grand fencing, the wood fencing you see there, and it's just constructed out of 4x4s and brackets, almost like from the hardware store. Then it had been painted multiple times, but it was just interesting that was the case with that stuff.
So a little bit of a fountain. I love that light post, and there were a few of them there. They're just so ornate.
Yep, and I filled my water bottle from that fountain.
And then, of course, you've got the big screens, so that people can see what's going on up there that are there, so they're prepared.
There's big
and even things on the ground. Just there were the 4 elements on the wind.
Yep.
Another fountain that's in the square. Selfie.
There's a selfie. There's Tom and Sherry.
And again, they're getting prepared. They got all their areas draped off.
Yep.
And then you look the opposite direction is the road down Vatican City that you walk up. We didn't go that particular route, but this was interesting. Tom took a picture of this. Now I don't know I don't know whose tent this was. I mean, obviously we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know whose tent that was, but
one of the workers is my guess.
I think it was probably a homeless person was. Well, it was one of two things. I think it was probably a homeless person that was living there, and that always kind of strikes me and makes me think about it, and especially looking inside St. Peter's Basilica, you really think about it. You look at all that grand stuff, and somebody's outside living in a tent. Or it may have been emergency supplies in case there
that's what I'm thinking.
Some big incident. A lot of times I'll stage emergency supplies around in advance. Oh, and this is that wall.
Yeah, so we left the center and we went over because we did have tickets ahead of time to go to the Vatican Museum. So this is the wall surrounding the city there, and you have to walk down, I don't know, it was what, maybe a
15-minute walk, yeah.
Walk over to the Vatican Museum entrance.
Yep. But again, just an exciting walk. There was nuns and clergy, and we saw one bishop, and it's, I don't know. I find that stuff exciting. I don't know why, but I do.
So we've made it over. This is the Vatican Museum entrance, and everything is a line. No matter where you go is a line, right? So we had tickets, so our line wasn't too bad. So this is the entrance part, and so we had to get in a line for our time for the tickets. And we probably stood in line for maybe 20 minutes there before our group was let in. And I don't think any of our photographs really show how crowded the museum was, but it really was pretty crowded. With tour groups and official tour groups, and then just on your own groups like what we were in. So in we go. And so once you get in, you go up kind of a spiral, very wide spiral staircase all the way up to the top.
To the top, yep.
And what you first encounter is Egyptian art.
Yep.
Not church,
nope.
But Egyptian art,
and
which was great to see, but a lot more than I would have expected.
Yeah, there was tons of Egyptian art there, and but yeah, it was neat to look at, and just these carvings
and then information about it. You just, like I say, I wasn't expecting this, but our future videos, we did go to Egypt, and so it was appropriately fitting, but a very large collection.
Yeah.
And since we did not get to go to one of the Egyptian museums, it ended up being nice to see some of this.
Nice to see some, yeah.
we didn't get to church artifacts until long into our visit.
Very nearly the end.
Yeah.
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 Because it was, I don't know, I would say maybe 50% of the stuff in there or more was these Egyptian artifacts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so these are just some select photos from that. But and again, we didn't see a lot of church stuff to begin with and whatnot, and clearly these are significant Egyptian items. But it took me a while to realize, too, that some of the rooms we were in that may have been Roman architecture, Roman artifacts, things of that nature, the room in which they were in, the frescoes that were in the room were the religious. And you kind of had to stop and look at that and remind yourself you were in the Vatican area, in their buildings, with these, amazing paintings. And those are coming up here soon. But you'll kind of see the decor in the rooms kind of changing. But you have to kind of go, wait a minute, what am I standing in?
Yeah. Yeah, you think about what these buildings have been over the centuries.
And some of these cat items that we've had in here are for Tom's sisters.
Yeah.
They're
My
cat
sisters
ladies.
like cats. They rescue cats, and so if I see pictures of cat stuff or images of cat stuff, I could capture them.
This was a whole room of sculpture related to animals.
Yep.
Animal heads.
And some pretty brutal stuff. Dogs attacking a deer. Mastiff? What kind of dogs are those?
I don't know. So as you can see, it's just not what I initially expected. But then here's one of these moments where you go, wait a second, this was a tapestry, a hallway with tapestries.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you look up and you're like, oh my gosh.
And you realize again where you are. And yeah, just what this hallway has been over the centuries.
And the floors.
And the floors and the mosaics.
The mosaics on the floors that, the artifacts are sitting on, tables and artifacts are sitting on. And here's one of those rooms with the painting.
Yep. And sometimes, like that tapestry hall, it's almost like the frescoes and the building itself is stunning, but I don't want to say it's secondary to what's on display in there because it wasn't, but it was separate from what's on display in there. But yeah, these frescoes on these walls is just unbelievable. If there was nothing in that room, it would still be on display.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And every room was different.
Yep.
And you really, again, had to make a point of noticing your surroundings and not just the artifacts that were on a table or in a case.
Maybe that's a lesson there for life, to don't forget to look up and look around and not just look at things beside what you're looking at, if that makes any sense. Man, unbelievable.
This was another dome, similar patterned after the Pantheon.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Noticeably.
Yeah. But with the statues down below.
More of these mosaics.
More of the mosaics on the floors.
I would love to have watched somebody make that mosaic.
Yeah.
And not know what they were going to put there. You know how you see street painters and stuff, and you're like, oh, I wonder what this is going to be.
Yeah.
And you just watch them lay these tiny little pieces.
And the subtle variations in color, too, that they would just select, yeah, this piece of tile looks like a good one for here.
Now, as I said, we did not take a tour on this one. We just had our on your own. Certainly, I'm sure the tours, as they were going through, they were explaining, the different things you were looking at in terms of the significance of the painting or what the painting was referencing or whatnot. So we kind of missed out on that part of it, but nevertheless, it was just stunning to look at.
And for me, looking at this stuff, I realized how little I know about history, and I felt like I should have known more about it. But I think it was a good thing for me to realize how little I know. I know a lot, a couple narrow fields, and there's like a whole lot of things that I don't know, and maybe there's some wisdom that comes from realizing that.
So the other part of the experience in this museum was looking out the windows. As you're going through, you're looking at the artifacts, you're looking at the walls and the floors, but then you got these shots out these windows. Not only the Vatican grounds, Vatican City, but just the vista of what you were looking at.
Rome going off in the distance. The Vatican soccer field to the right in that picture.
We tried to capture those. This was a courtyard area where they had, over to the left was kind of the cafe area.
Yep.
We never did find an opening to that. We must have walked by it.
We must have walked by it. But I really like that golden globe sculpture there.
This is just, again, a shot out of a window of the parking area for the staff that work at the Vatican.
Yeah. That's the parking lot.
But just a gorgeous view with the trees and just the atmosphere. I liked those different openings. And there's one coming up of the Basilica, which was a neat shot. But beautiful grounds, palm trees, pine trees,
gorgeous,
lawns.
Yeah. And those mushroom-looking trees are a variety of pine tree.
Yeah, we thought they were some special Italian tree, so we asked on one of our tours, "What kind of tree is that?" He said, "That's a pine tree."
Yeah.
Cut to look that way. So this is my favorite, just the shot out of this particular window of the Basilica.
Yeah.
It looks like a painting. It doesn't look real, but it was. So this, I think, leads into our visit to St. Peter's. Yeah, so now we're headed towards the Basilica. So Tom mentioned this was a Jubilee year, and he came across an app to be a Jubilee pilgrim.
Yep.
So you want to explain that real quick? And so that allowed us to get in here pretty darn quick.
Yeah, basically this app to become a Jubilee pilgrim, you would sign up for the app, and you, in theory, got to enter in through a special door, but it was just really a separate line that you went in through the same door.
But we got in much faster.
We got in much faster, yeah, the line was much shorter. And I really like this pilgrim notion. A couple years ago, I started talking about pilgrimages with a friend of mine, and I was kind of uncomfortable with that term. And, on a separate trip, him and I did the Camino Santiago, and you're called a pilgrim there. And what I did was I looked at pilgrim in the dictionary, and a pilgrim is somebody who's journeying through life. So that made us pilgrims, and it fit well. But this photo is going in through the pilgrim line, and it cut a lot of waiting time off. Yeah.
And just if you turn to your left as you were walking through, this was a shot, which if you didn't turn to your left, you didn't see it.
You didn't see it.
And then this is just before you enter the Basilica.
Yep.
Doors, and then go, oh my gosh. There's the door.
There's the door.
And you think, what is it going to look like inside?
Yeah.
And then you're inside.
And you're inside. And that's St. Peter's Basilica. And that picture doesn't come close to capturing what it is. None of these pictures do. It's just too big.
Yeah. That is the original. There are other copies of that in different places. We ended up seeing one in Florence, Italy, but that is the original. And this is another space that there is so much to see. Everything is covered with gold or sculpture or painting or whatnot. And then there's all these different alcoves, I call them, but I don't know that's what they call them, recognition to different people.
Yep.
Within the Catholic faith.
And people's remains in there. Their tombs. But you could probably go in there 20 times and still not see it all. It's just unbelievable. These are tombs of different popes. They're Pope Innocent.
And they're just all, there's, I don't know how many there are. At least
dozens.
50, at least
Dozens.
50, probably more than that.
Dozens and dozens.
There's just tons of them.
And that was something really neat I thought about Pope Francis. He wanted to be buried in a cemetery with more just the regular people.
Yeah, we did not go over to that church where he was entombed.
No.
And this is the center altarpiece.
Yep.
Which was kind of surprising, it being the black. It was kind of blackish color.
That was interesting, yeah. And at the bottom, I don't know if it's real easy to see, but those are chairs. They're clear plastic chairs, all lined up, lots of them. But just the artwork on that black marble altar is just, all of it is just awe-inspiring. And you look at that, and you think about the person living in a tent outside.
This space, too, just a few days before, was where the funeral was for the Pope.
For the Pope.
Pope Francis.
And that's probably why they had all those chairs set up still.
Well, and yeah.
They're still putting stuff away.
And this is back behind that main altar piece. You can kind of see a little more close up of that piece. That was the one surprising piece to me in there, was that blackish.
But again, these pictures they're just a little snippet of an amazing place.
And then this is one of the, I don't know how many people capture this photo. This is the exit as you're leaving. And, you know, entries and exits are just always interesting to me. And just making a point of seeing those. And, you know, the awe-inspiring of going through an entry, like, oh my gosh.
Here we are.
And then on an exit, just, I'm leaving this historical, significant place, and I'm walking out.
Yep.
I've just been in this significant place, and now I'm walking out.
But for me, I agree with that, but for me, there's also the mystery of what's next when you go through an exit.
And the big doors.
The big steel or iron doors.
So this is, I think, our last photo in this segment. Okay, well, we hope you enjoyed the video and got a little insight about some of these main spots that people go and see in Rome.
In Rome. Rome was, I don't know, I think I would probably say this about every place we went on this trip. Rome was amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
knowing that you're seeing sites that are thousands of years old and the significance to history and whatnot was just that you're actually there. So, but we enjoyed it. 3 days. We saw what we really wanted to see, other than the Sistine Chapel.
Yep.
But we hope that we've given you a little insight on things, and like I say, we'll put a couple links in the description to share some of the places that we found that we liked for dining and staying there in Rome. So if you've got future plans for Rome, we hope you enjoy your trip, and we hope you will subscribe to the channel and watch our upcoming videos. We are probably going to have at least 10 videos through the course of this as we share the different places we went, because up next will be our trip to Civitavecchia, which is the port for Rome, for us to get on our cruise number 1, which was on the Norwegian Viva, for an 11-day cruise to the Mediterranean.
Yep. And put in the comments what you think about our video, whether you like it or not. We'd like to hear your comments and questions you might have. We'll answer any questions, and things you might like to see in future videos. So,
yeah, great. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time when we head down to the port to head out on a cruise.
Yep.
So, see you next time.
Don't forget to subscribe, and if you like the video, press the like button.
Yep. Okay, see you next time.
Thanks for watching.